Hello everyone, thank you for being here. And yes, today my talk, Beyond the Smartphone, Android's Identity Crisis. First things first, I just want to take a quick selfie. If you don't want to be in it, duck, I guess, but otherwise tough. But there we go. Why is it counting down? That's weird. What is it doing? Okay, it took a load, so we'll go with that. Technology's great. Anyway, thank you very much for humoring me. So a little bit about me to get kind of started. So I've been an Android developer since 2009. This is the oldest photo that was related to that I could find. A much younger, less hairy version of me at, I think, XDA DevCon 2014, if anyone remembers that. That was a lot of fun. But then more recently, I've been the Android developer advocate at Vonage. And there is me with the great Android figures that anyone that went to DroidCon in the previous years probably remembers as well. However, I have since left Vonage. I know I'm now here. I'm surprised they let me back in the building, but I guess we left on good terms. And more recently, I'm now the head of developer community at Mobile Seasons, which is probably a company that no one in here has ever heard of. So what I normally just say is I'm the head of developer community at the company that runs DroidCon, because I think everyone knows DroidCon. And here's me as Where's Wally from DroidCon last year. It was at Halloween, so we had a bit of a fancy dress. What's it mean to be the head of developer community at a company that does events like that? Well, kind of just generally trying to make the events as good as possible for developers by using my experience as a developer to make that happen. So making sure things like the program is good, making sure we have a good program committee, making sure that we can do some fun and silly stuff as well. For example, one of the things that I did, and if you check out our Flickr, there's about 15 photos of me hiding in the different groups as Where's Wally. So if you ever have a few minutes and you want to do something, check out the Flickr. And yes, if you're playing along, that's me on that one there. But there's plenty more if you really want to do that. The other great thing that I get to do is I get to give away free stuff. So we have got this giveaway. This is your last chance to kind of scan and check it out. And I've actually got physical gift vouchers to give away that I 3D printed. And essentially, we've got 100% discount codes for Android makers by DroidCon, which is happening in April in Paris. We have 3 gift codes for DroidCon London, which is happening in December this year. And we have 5 for our main event, Next App DevCon, which is happening in Berlin and will include DroidCon Berlin, among with SwiftCon for the iOS people that might be hiding in the room, React Native and everything else as well. And those codes are, like I said, they're physical QR codes. So if you win and you can't go, well, find a friend. You'll be very, very popular if you can give them a ticket or trade. I don't mind. I don't really mind at all. But there are 11 chances to win tonight. So make sure you've scanned and signed up, because that's going to be an easy win.
Android Maker is in France, right?
Yes, Paris.
Yes.
Yes, so April in Paris. Very nice. Yeah. And also, you'll be in a chance to win multiple times. I'm not removing people once they've won. I can't be bothered to do that. So you'll have lots of chances. OK, on with the talk. So Android in the early days. When we were an Android developer back in the day, it probably meant that you built apps for something like this. This is the Samsung Galaxy S. But OK, yes, there were other devices available, maybe something like the HTC Evo. But essentially, you were making apps for phones. You were making apps for a very specific UI, a very specific kind of dimensions. If you were getting really fancy, you might do something for something like this and actually have a landscape UI. You probably didn't, and it probably scaled terribly on something like this. But maybe that's what you did as well. You were thinking about portrait, you were thinking about landscape. And then, OK, a few years moved on, and Honeycomb came out, and maybe you started looking at doing tablet UIs and making use of all that expansive space. Although you probably didn't. Again, and as much as Google would have loved you to have, you probably stuck to doing phone UIs that then just scaled badly on a tablet because no one was using the tablets. The iPad had won. Let's be honest, no one was doing it. Very, very, very small amount of users and therefore very small amount of developers doing it. And then something like this came along, and maybe you thought, oh, yes, I can build for a wearable. That's going to be really cool. And then you realized it was kind of a bit of a nightmare to integrate that into your pre-existing code base. So you probably built something new, separate, dedicated, that maybe talked to your pre-existing app. But they were very distinct things. This is my Android Wear OS app. This is my tablet maybe UI. It was all very separate, all very taken apart. So realistically, even when that was coming out, you were probably just building for a phone, and that was that. Well, if we fast forward to today, we live in a world that looks a little bit more like this. Android is all over the place. You have Android on TVs. You have Android on games consoles with funky dual screens and weird control mechanisms and all sorts of things going on. Yes, you definitely still have phones. Yes, you definitely still have tablets. But then you also have foldables. So suddenly your phone can become a tablet at a moment's notice. And you as the developer don't necessarily have much control over that. There's even things like Android XR, which okay, is still a very new thing, but it's here. And so suddenly your apps can be interacted with in the 3D space. You might have heard about Android Desktop. Google's making a little bit of noise about it. And the fact that Android can essentially be a desktop operating system. Samsung's been trying to do it for many years. Again, not many people really cared about it, but it's becoming a very real thing now. So not only can your view in your app change because it's a foldable, but it could actually be completely scalable and completely movable by the user, and you have no control over that, and they can make it whatever size they want. You've also got Android Auto and kind of having in-car systems as well, which is, again, a completely different UI, a completely different experience, but something that you could build for. I also included this dictionary pen in the middle because I found this on TikTok Shop, and it was a £30 little device that is actually running Android. I'm currently trying to install Doom on it, so that's going interestingly, but it is running Android. So again, you have these weird edge cases where device manufacturers are cramming Android into something that doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it's there and apps are being built for it. So Android is everywhere, is kind of the point of this slide. The other point is it's not just about Android. We're all Kotlin developers. So we all kind of probably started to think about Kotlin multi-platform in some way, maybe kind of been teased by it a little bit, maybe suffered a little bit with its pains, but also maybe really starting to enjoy it. And this opens up your originally Android app to an even bigger ecosystem. You've got the kind of whole Mac, iOS, tvOS, all the OSs that you could actually access using your application, Windows, Linux. You could even run your application in a JVM on a server and have it headless and doing other things. Or, if you really hate yourself, you can use WASM and you can run it on the web. It's possible. But the point is, suddenly your Android app isn't just running in all these weird and wonderful Android devices. It can now be run in all these different environments that were never thought of 15 years ago. In fact, actually, this presentation itself is a Kotlin multi-platform application. So we can have some fun here and do all that sort of stuff. So the point is, your application can be anywhere and do anything. So with all that in mind, how many people are still just testing, building, designing for this? It's okay, don't be shy. If no one put their hands up, this talk would be very quick because the point is people are still doing this, and that is kind of unfortunate. Because yes, it's still a huge market. It's still very important. It's still a core audience. But in 2026, we really need to start thinking beyond this. If we're just targeting our mobile phones, we're missing out on large markets. Things like foldables are becoming more popular. Things like Android Desktop means that, at least very soon, when it becomes no longer experimental, any user could plug their phone into a monitor and suddenly they have a desktop experience. It's going to be very obvious very quickly if your UI doesn't scale nicely and doesn't behave with that environment. These are markets that are happening and are very real. But of course, it's not just about the screen scaling, which is, I guess, to the user, the most obvious thing that's maybe wrong with your app if you don't support it. But we've also got a wide range of input options now available to us. You know, back in the day, you kind of just had to worry about setting an on-click listener on a button and you're happy. Maybe you did keyboard shortcuts if you were really crazy, but the likelihood is you just did some on-click listeners. But again, that isn't the case anymore. So yes, screen sizes can be widely different, but so can the inputs. It could be a 3D environment where you've got like a pinch, you've got different hardware buttons that are available to you from the devices. You've got a full keyboard, maybe, with keyboard shortcuts and all that sort of stuff. But not only can your screen size be different, it can also change while the app's running, because you can either unfold your foldable, or it's running on a desktop and the user is moving it, or it is running in a window. I don't think anyone's actually really doing that like for themselves. Like everyone, like Samsung comes out and says, "Oh, you've got multi-window support." Who actually does that on a phone? I'm not sure many people do, but it's there. I mean, but it's more the bigger screens where this is going to become a big thing. So what I kind of want to say is we don't build screens anymore as developers, or at least we shouldn't be. We should be building UI states that can easily flow into whatever container they're poured into. So you have this state, and it doesn't matter if it's being stretched out onto a tablet. It doesn't matter if it's on a phone. It doesn't matter if it's in a small window. Whatever it is, the app deals with that in a very kind of seamless way. So the other thing, especially if you're kind of an indie developer or you're developing on your own, I've certainly fallen foul of this. It's very easy to just build for the device that you have and just test on that one thing. But, oh yeah, it works perfect on my phone. I'd say push yourself a little bit and explore the emulators and explore different devices. And just run it up once. Just see what your app looks like. And then you might be either pleasantly surprised or less so, and you might have some work ahead of you. But give it a try. Have a look at it. And then I'd also say, once you've done that, and maybe you've realized there's some pain or some issues, try not to hand-roll responsiveness anymore. There is a lot of canonical layouts available to you from Google that handles responsiveness in a very elegant way. If you're just trying to do this yourself, you're going to hit edge cases that you haven't thought of. Use things like the window size classes and, like I said, the layouts provided by Google to do this. One kind of example, and I haven't just done this so I could show the nice syntax highlighting that I put into my presentation app. Ooh. But one example that we may have been doing a while ago is something like this, where we just kind of go, what's the DP? Okay, yeah, it's a tablet. Okay, yeah, it's a phone. But you're going to hit edge cases very quickly where that actually isn't really correct anymore. So maybe you want to do something a little bit more like this, and you make use of those window size classes, and you just kind of let the scaffold flow your view into whatever space is available to you. Again, there's plenty of other ways to do this. I'm not saying only do this, but just consider the tools available to you now for responsiveness, and try, if you ever see somewhere where you're like actually checking for a specific DPI, you're probably doing something wrong, and you probably want to make some changes. But it's not just me saying this, thankfully, because I'm not really that important or probably worth listening to really, but Google are saying this. And there's actually some key changes that are happening in the SDK 37 with Android 17. When you're running on a large screen, this is kind of in preparation for...
Google defines it with DPs again.
No, yeah, well, this is... look, I'm not saying Google has any kind of logic or reason to anything that they do. Not here from Google, but this is from Google's documentation. So they've decided, in their wisdom, it's a good catch. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, they're not. But anyway, if the smaller dimension is greater than 600 dp, there's some new attributes that they're just going to flat out ignore from your manifest. So the screen orientation, you can no longer set your screen orientation in all these different kind of options that you could provide it. You can't set a requested orientation. That's not going to work either anymore. You can't set your activity to be resizable. Your activity is resizable. Tough. That's no longer a choice. You can't set a minimum aspect ratio. Again, tough. You're getting what you're given, deal with it. You can't set a maximum either. So these are things that are coming very, very soon this year. And if your app is using any of these, you really need to do something about it pretty quickly. So again, yeah, screen things are happening. Google is telling us this has to happen, so do something about it. And what about inputs? Well, this is a little bit more fuzzy. This is a little bit more kind of, I'd say down to us. Google hasn't mandated this yet. But I would say that we should start considering inputs as abstracting away the business logic of inputs and treating them as generic events. Because whether it's a click on, an on-click, whether it's a remote control press on a TV, whether it's some sort of pinch gesture in XR, the business logic should be the same wherever your app is running. It should, when the user interacts with that element, it does something. We don't really care how they interact. So again, for example, back in the day, we could just have an on-click listener and we're done. Everyone's happy, not a problem. But maybe we want to do something a little bit more agnostic and pulling out that event so that we can then start thinking about on-key events, different clickable options available to us. Again, I'm not saying this is the only way to do it. It's just an option. But yeah, basically consider how your user might now interact with your app. They're not necessarily just clicking on it. I saw some great talks last year at Joy-Con events about things like keyboard shortcuts. They're great for accessibility because a user might need to interact with a keyboard as opposed to a touchscreen. But also, again, with Android Desktop coming, users are going to be used to using certain keyboard shortcuts, and they're going to expect them to work in your apps. So yeah, Android as a desktop operating system. In Android 17, desktop mode is no longer experimental. So obviously it hasn't happened yet, but I'm pretty sure that once this release, this is going to be a feature that anyone that's got Android 17 can easily use. It's not going to be hidden anywhere. Normal users are going to use it. Okay, Google might kill it, but eventually, but it's something that will be available in 17. So it's something that we should look at. So therefore, things like taskbars, status bars, floating windows, these are all kind of standard things that we should start familiarizing ourselves with because we're no longer just developing for a mobile screen. We're kind of developing desktop apps as well. And things like drag and drop. Well, again, in that environment, we'd expect drag and drop to exist. So we should start thinking how we could implement that in our own apps. And also things like status bar offsets. We really shouldn't be doing that anymore because, again, your view might not have a status bar at the top of it. It might be a free floating window or something like that. And then the other one that I've kind of been exploring a little bit myself, just because it's kind of interesting and a bit niche and a bit weird, is kind of having Android in the cockpit, as using Android in your car. And this is a whole different way of doing UI and something that if you really want to challenge yourself, I really recommend looking at the emulator and trying to build something there. Because one of the big things is basically, if a user can't do something in 2 seconds, the OS will block that interaction. I don't know anyone that uses Android Auto or anything like that. If you start trying to do stuff in your screen, it will actually flash up and block you from doing anything because you've done too much. So again, it's a kind of a constraint that we've never had before on a phone, but I think it's kind of interesting to work with. So there are templates that are available to mitigate this and to show you how to do things. Again, look at the templates first before you build anything custom. The libraries are safety compliant. It's a big thing in a car. And of course, the other thing that's cool in a car is trying to make your UI voice first. Trying to actually speak to your app. Because fundamentally, that's the safest way to interact with an app in a car, is you never have to look away from the road. You can just speak to your car and do something. So again, as a fun challenge to have a look at. But this is where things like Kotlin multi-platform can be super useful in a way that maybe we don't necessarily think about. You say Kotlin multi-platform, you think, oh yeah, multiple different operating systems, multiple different environments like that. But actually, that multi-platform part can also be as in different platforms like a car, different platforms like a smartwatch or something else. So you can still have that one brain, if you like, that one business logic, and then you can have these specific edge cases of UIs that your app integrates with. And then Android XR as well, another new thing that Google are pushing quite hard and I think will become a big thing this year. That's a whole different space because no one wants there to be interacting with an app and they're walking about in their living room and suddenly there's apps in their face and they can't escape from it and they've got a pop-up that they have to do something with. You know, consider how your app is actually going to look in 3D space and how a user would interact with it in a way that doesn't block their kind of flow. And also consider the fact that even 2D apps, when they run in Android XR, they have that Z space. They have that sense of depth. So even if you just load up your 2D app in Android XR now, you can play around with depth, which is kind of cool. And also other ideas like spatial persistence, where you start a task on your phone, and then you put on the glasses, and you continue that task. Again, all things that kind of Google are looking at. And then also things like passkeys as well. I put this in here just because, again, I think it's something that's going to be an interesting problem to solve this year and moving forward, is how do you kind of verify that the user is who they say they are when you've got devices that multiple people could just pick up and use. It's a bit easier with a phone, but you know, this kind of idea of passkeys and having ways of verifying the user outside of traditional methods. So with all that in mind, I would say that 2026, we are more than just mobile developers, and we should strive to be more than just mobile developers. I would go as far as to say we are now edge computing developers that make use of Kotlin as our programming language. The devices that we program for are those edge devices, but they might not be a phone. So back to the title of the talk. The identity crisis component of this shouldn't be something that we try to solve. Certainly it's not our problem. Google marketing might have other issues with it. And how you identify the different Android bits, but that's not our problem to solve. For us, this is an opportunity. For us, the fact that Android is now everywhere gives us new opportunities as developers. I would go as far as to say Android has kind of won the battle of being the most versatile single operating system on the planet. It's not just a mobile operating system anymore, and we need to start acting like that's the case. We need to start proving that Android is more than just a mobile phone, and there's so much more that we can do with it. So, thank you very much. I hope you've kind of enjoyed my little ramble. Hopefully it inspires you to kind of think about new things this year and new ways to build apps. If you are interested in connecting with me, I'm Dev with Zachary kind of across the internet. You can go to devwithzachary.com. The QR code will take you to the slide, or the Kotlin app that makes the slides, so you can check that out. I do plan to release it as a library, but I haven't got the free time right now. So at one point, you might be able to build your own apps, slide decks using my Kotlin library that I wrote and spent way too much time on.